investigative. Let's jump in.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Once you watch this, you will understand that this is not live. This is an upload, even though it might be shown as a live chat. Do understand that it's not live. Happy Friday to everybody. I'm coming to you from the 12 Gauge Investigative Lab. My name is 12 Gauge. I wanted to talk about a lot that is going on before tonight's Dateline episode. There's been a lot of, I wouldn't say controversy, because controversy is usually governed where there is no understanding of what it is that people are talking about. I wouldn't say this is controversy. I would say that this is probably shock and awe for a lot of people. Because for a long time, we have been told a lot of different things. We've been told a lot of different things. And, in order to understand it, some of my subs and myself have had to compartmentalize this and put it into perspective in ways that is really not conducive to other people's understanding of what it is that we've been trying to show all this time. When you get called names, when you get called guilters and all this other stuff, it's really a shame that you get called names, because when it's all said and done, the truth does come out. And I believe that that's what's happening at this point, is the truth is slowly leaking itself out. I don't know why this keeps freezing. It's aggravating me nonetheless. And there is the man of the hour. The selfie was supposedly taken from his phone on December 28, 2022, just days before his arrest. It has been stated that this was probably captioned after a Bundy-style photo that he had looked up. And, it's easy to see that, because for whatever reason, he does emulate Ted Bundy, as we've been told. It's interesting to me that there's so much that's coming out now that we at one point were questioning all this stuff, and people were saying, no, there's no evidence. There's no evidence. There's no way that you're going to be able to tie this man to this crime. The state doesn't have anything. The state doesn't have anything. It's all circumstantial. Okay, so if we want to look at circumstantial evidence, an individual was supposedly seen in the house dressed in all black like this individual is right here. The only difference is this individual is not wearing a balaclava. Where the individual that was seen in the house by one of the surviving roommates, the individual was wearing a balaclava and was dressed all in black. So if you're looking at this photo, you might ask yourself as an investigator, not as a YouTube bystander, you'd ask yourself, well, what was the purpose of this photo? And we've seen another photo that was taken not long after the murders, which was 10:31 a.m. So let's get to the article and let's talk about this, and I will come back to this photo as we see a little bit of what is in store for the show tonight on NBC. I don't really have cable, so I don't think I'm going to be able to watch this. But we'll watch a little bit of it, even though I don't want to get copyrighted by no means. Almost off copyright jail, so that's the last thing I want to do is get copyrighted. So let's go ahead and watch this a little bit, and I will comment on it as well. Okay?
Now, this video obtained exclusively by Dateline shows a white car on King Road in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, 2022. At the wheel, the state will allege was Brian Koberger, making repeated passes near a house where minutes later 4 students were stabbed to death. Koberger has...
Okay, as you saw there, many passes were done around the King Road residence, down Queen Road actually, and you saw the timestamps of every car passing by the 1112 house. What you have to ask yourself is this. You could hear that vehicle turning and the tires gripping, could you not? I'm no tire specialist, never claimed to have been. But even if that photo is not clear, okay, because we've had many people talk about, well, the lights are too bright, this and that and the other. There's no way you could tell that that's an Elantra, that's not an Elantra, that's a Dodge Dart, blah, 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 whatever. Well, I want to ask you this, though. If that vehicle is making those passes, wouldn't you be able to hear the same tire screeches that you heard as it was turning? It had a distinctive screech every time it turned. I don't know if the vehicle needed brakes or if it had some kind of mechanical issue with it, but you could hear some kind of screeching sound. Not very loud, but loud enough. You know what I mean? So it makes me wonder as what actually do we see in this video? Let me let me back it up a little bit and play it again because this is interesting to me.
Documents until now. This video, obtained exclusively by Dateline, shows a white car on King Road in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, 2022. At the wheel, the state will allege was Brian Koberger.
See, as he makes a turn and makes some kind of screeching sound. And you know, there's been individuals that talk about, well, look, those pumpkins are no longer orange or white or gray. Everything in the video is grainy. I'll give you that. Especially if you pause the video as I've done. You can't really tell a lot on this shot, but do you think that they sat there and looked at this like this? Do you think that they really sat around and looked at this like we're looking at this?
Making repeated passes near a house where minutes later 4 students were stabbed to death.
I don't believe so. I believe that, see, you can't see anything because it's a bright light. The headlights are kind of blushing out anything you could possibly see. I was hoping that, the fact that he was turning all those times, you could see an angle, but it doesn't look like it unless they have different type of angles that you can see.
From our trusted sources, presented now for the first time in public, are part of a digital trail from before and after the murders of students Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin.
I'm jumping around this because, like I said, I don't want to be copyrighted. I've just been copyrighted, and I don't want to be.
Koberger's cell phone in the possession of law enforcement now, showing the phone calls he made shortly after the murders to a phone linked to his parents.
Okay. So supposedly, after the murders, he contacted his parents' phone. And in this article, you're going to see where it's more than once. 90 minutes after the murders, he's contacting his parents. So 90 minutes after would be what? An hour and a half? So 4:30 plus an hour and a half would be like what? God, my math sucks. An hour would be 5:30, and then 30 more minutes would be 6 o'clock. So at 6 o'clock, his time, he was contacting his parents, which Eastern timeline is totally different. So I believe they're probably 2 or 3 hours ahead. So if it's 6 o'clock where he was, it was probably 9 a.m. in the morning when he was contacting them. I wonder what was said in the context of the phone calls. There was one after the murders, and then there was obviously, I believe one before the infamous thumbs up photo.
Just before he took a now infamous thumbs up selfie. And Google searches regarding serial killers, including Ted Bundy, and searches for a particular kind of pornography. His searches include the words forced, passed out, drugged, sleeping. Does that mean anything to you?
Interesting, isn't it? These are all themes of power, domination, and control.
After the murders, investigators discovered a sheet.
So there's still people that say, so we searched Ted Bundy. He was a criminology student. There's no reason why he wouldn't have been searching Ted Bundy. The pornography, forced, drugged, sleeping. That's coincidental as well, right? But coincidental can get you convicted if the story's painted correctly. And what I mean by that is, if you're able to convince a jury that his pornographic site that he visited, if any one of those was about a masked man going into a home and killing anybody with a knife, I don't know what to tell you, Brian. I don't know what to tell you. Because a lot of people are going to say, well, that's coincidental. Well, it could be coincidental, but he's searching all this stuff. He's watching this type of porn. Especially, let me drink something. Good grief. Especially if any of these searches are multitudes of patterns that kind of correspond with the murder. any kind of views, any kind of themes, if any of that had any kind of reference to how it happened, I don't need to tell you the significance in that.
Teeth from a K-bar knife apparently left by the killer in one of the victim's beds. DNA found on that sheath has been linked to Brian Koberger. Dateline was the first to report that Koberger bought a K-bar knife 7 months before the murders. And now we've obtained records showing that after the murders, Koberger was back on Amazon looking at K-bars.
So, there's many people that say his parents bought this knife, he didn't. Okay. These same people are probably the people that never read the documents, because it had been stated in the document that he bought a gift card and he bought the K-bar, the first one, with the gift card. It was delivered to a Brian C. Koberger at that Pennsylvania address. And if there's any way that he had to sign for any of that, and he was the one that signed for it, you can put it in his hands. Is there any photos of him with that K-bar knife around that home? You say, well, that'll be just a photo. But that puts the K-bar knife in his hand. And not only did he order that K-bar knife, he ordered a sharpener. And he also, after the murders, once he got home, he was Googling, or he was searching for a replacement K-bar. So what could possibly have happened to his K-bar that he ordered before he left? Now that he came home for break, he's having to replace it. What happened to it? What could happen to it? And I've heard people say, what if that K-bar never left the residence? What if it was in Pennsylvania at the time of the murders? Well, that's interesting, because wouldn't it have been in Pennsylvania when he returned? But people don't think that far in advance. They believe that people don't really have that capacity to put two and two together. The louder they get, the more demonstrative they are, the more they try to ram their point home.
He even clicked Buy Now and began the checkout process before exiting. Koberger's trial is scheduled for...
Okay, let's get past this. I don't think this is going to talk about the pool party, which is cool, because I believe that the article does. Let me go ahead and shrink this down. It says, searches and selfies, Idaho College murder suspect Brian Koberger's online habits emerge in new details. It said 6 weeks before, a masked intruder slipped inside a rental home on the edge of the University of Idaho campus, fatally stabbed 4 students, and ducked into the darkness. Brian Koberger was coming under pressure. During the fall semester of 2022, Koberger was a 27-year-old doctoral student in criminology at Washington State University, an 8-mile drive west of the University of Idaho. His role as a teaching assistant, leading classes and grading papers, was not going well. Students and sources who spoke to Dateline said some students complained that he was overly demanding and they didn't feel comfortable. A dean summoned him to discuss the professional behavior after he also clashed with his colleagues. But around that time, Instagram may have served as a distraction. Koberger's cell phone browsing history, obtained by Dateline and in the possession of law enforcement, shows dozens of pictures of female students at Washington State and the University of Idaho, many in bathing suits. A review of these accounts found that some of them were close friends with your followers or followers of three of the murdered students, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Gonsalves, and Madison Mogan. For those of you that don't understand correlation between 6 degrees of separation, well, there's your ability to know these students without being in the close proximity of knowing these students. So there you have it. If they did find these photos on his phone, then this is his 6th degree of separation, or if you will, how he knew about Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana. While Idaho prosecutors allege Kohberger murdered the three housemates as well as Kernodle's boyfriend Ethan Chapin, 20, in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, a prior connection, if any, between the suspect and the victims has remained unknown. Now, ahead of the long-awaited trial that's set to begin in August, digital materials and documents obtained by Dateline offer new insight into the case in the weeks leading up to the killings and Kohberger's arrest in late December 2022. So we have motive here. A judge entered a not guilty plea on Kohberger's behalf in May 2023 on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. Defense lawyers have said he maintains his innocence, and during a court hearing in Boise last month, they teased the possibility of an alternative suspect. Visiting Moscow. In the summer before the murders, Kohberger had moved from the Poconos region of Pennsylvania, where his family lives, to Pullman, Washington, home of the Washington State University. He was invited to an afternoon pool party in nearby Moscow, Idaho, on July 9th, according to 3 witnesses who met him there. One of them, his last name was Martinez, a friend of his, and obviously the people he met while he was there. Kohberger's phone data, analyzed by an FBI cell phone expert and obtained by Dateline, suggests he was in Moscow again that day after dark. So not only did he go to the pool party, he returned back to his apartment, obviously got his car and went back to Moscow. What could have driven him to go back after dark? Over the next month, the expert said his phone data indicates a dozen trips to Moscow. In doing so, his phone had also connected with a cell tower, providing coverage to within 100 meters of 1122 King Road, the address of the murdered housemates, according to the data. So let me ask you, let's say that Mr. Kohberger does suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. For the sake of argument, that 12 times indicates obsession. It indicates a pattern, late night or early morning. So these were patterns in which he was visiting this residence or the area. So that depicts the obsessive compulsive, not only within his own mindset of sobriety, but also in the mindset of a drug addict. Because once you turn that pleasure center on, and obviously seeing girls in bikinis, and especially if one that he fixated on or liked, this would have lit him up like a Christmas tree. And the peeping began. Supposedly, in my opinion. In late September, records from the criminology student's phone and in possession of law enforcement included an internet search for sociopathic traits in college students. Why would you look that up at this point in your studies? Those are things that you look up in the beginning stages of your criminology studies, not PhD level. In the following month, there was a search for pornography containing word drugged and sleeping. And like I said earlier, if any of those searches led to a pattern of any kind of correlation of how this crime went down, circumstantial or not, everything else that they have on him doesn't look well. Then on October 14, Koberger was pulled over in his white 2015 Honda Elantra for an alleged traffic violation, his second stop in 7 weeks. He had an amicable interaction with the Washington State University police officer, body cam video shows. 5 days later, another online search. Can psychopaths behave prosocially? According to Koberger's phone data. Now, this could be a very interesting paper if you were giving it to your students. Perfect title, and a lot of thought could go into them giving you their perspective of this. I could see this maybe being an online search for his class, but not the first one, or the one with Ted Bundy. The following month, 6 days before the King Road murders, Koberger's phone connected with the same cell tower close to the home. The FBI data indicates the data showed 23 visits over a 4-month period, all after dark. So you don't tell me that's compulsion. I think you need to look at the word again. Koberger's lawyers have said in filings that he would take drives alone late at night, often hiking or stargazing, and contend cell phone data would show he was out near the crime scene when the killings occurred. A timeline. On November 12, 2022, the King Road housemates were out celebrating senior day at the University of Idaho's football team played a home game that afternoon. Around 9 p.m., Gonzalez posted a carousel pictures on Instagram showing her and her housemate that day. The caption, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day." So wouldn't it be interesting if there are any saved photos of the one she posted that night? Or possibly even browsing history of any of her photos, Maddie's photos, or Xana's photos. By 2 a.m. the next day, the housemates had returned after a night of partying. Gonsalves and Mogan were together while Kernodle with Chapin and 2 other housemates, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, were also still up. At 3:30 a.m., a car that investigators believed to be a white Elantra was captured on a neighboring home's security video. The footage, obtained by Dateline, showed the car going toward the King Road house and circling past the block multiple times over the next half hour. At 4:07 a.m., the white car drove by yet again, then didn't come back into view until 4:20 a.m., when the video showed the vehicle speeding off. It's in that 13-minute time frame that prosecutors had said in a court filing they believe Gonsalves, Mogan, Kernodle, and Chapin were murdered, suffering multiple wounds by a large knife. Mortensen and Funk were not physically harmed, but Mortensen would later tell investigators that she had seen a figure walking past her in a black clothing and a ski mask exiting the house. Sources close to the investigation told Dateline they believe Mogan may have been the killer's intended target because the intruder had gone directly upstairs to her bedroom where Gonsalves was with her. The tan leather sheath for a large K-bar knife was found on the bed next to Mogan's body, investigators would later say. The investigative sources also said Kernodle, who was still up after ordering food from DoorDash, was attacked next. Then the sources said the perpetrator turned to her boyfriend, who was believed to be asleep in bed, and carved Chapin's lower legs with a blade. And we heard that very early on. Data from Koberger's phone indicates it had been turned off before 3 a.m. on the morning of the murders. It connected with a cell tower with the south of Moscow at 4:48, records show. About 90 minutes later, the phone records indicate a call was made in the Pullman area to another phone, to a number registered to an account belonging to Koberger's father. It appears several family phones, including his mother's, are on that account. At least 3 calls were made to the same number that morning. Data shows the phone was briefly back in Moscow just after 9 a.m. before prosecutors say Koberger returned to his apartment in Pullman, where he took a selfie at 10:31 a.m. with a thumbs-up pose in the bathroom mirror. So just reading this, I can tell you what I see happening. He went back, supposedly, in my opinion, went back, drove around, didn't see any cops, didn't see any emergency personnel, went back to his house, felt like he got away with it, and guess what? In the days after the murders, there was browsing activity on Koberger's phone that law enforcement would later collect forensically. One Google search was for the University of Idaho murders. So why would he be searching this? What would cause them to search this? Other searches were for a program about serial killer Ted Bundy and a YouTube video about the King Road victims. What would cause him to search all this stuff if supposedly he didn't know about it? By mid-December, Koberger would return to his family's home in Pennsylvania, with police in Moscow still not confirming publicly whether they had a suspect. The one critical clue they solicited the public's help for was information on the car, what they believed to be a white Elantra seen in the area around the time of the killings. But investigators did have other evidence they say pointed them to Koberger, including DNA on the knife sheaths found in Mogan's bedroom. Authorities used genetic genealogy to source the DNA. 2 days after Christmas in 2022, investigators covertly pulled trash from outside Koberger's home for testing. According to prosecutors, the DNA turned out to be a statistical match. In the meantime, the search history on Koberger's phone would show more videos of Ted Bundy, the song Criminal by Britney Spears, and additional selfies, including Koberger wearing a black hoodie like how Bundy was dressed in the program viewed on YouTube. So let me tell you, could this have been the hoodie that he wore in the commission of the crimes? Could he have been dressing up again as a sense of nostalgia? I wonder where this hoodie's at. Then on December 30th, just after 9 a.m. or 1 a.m., law enforcement agents descended on the family's home with a warrant for Koberger's arrest. If found guilty, he could face the death penalty, which his lawyers unsuccessfully argued should be ruled out because of his autism. Koberger had not spoken publicly in the case, but in a recent court filing, his lawyers offered a glimpse into his demeanor when he was arrested. He asked the officer about his education and suggested that they get a coffee at a later date. He did not perceive the profoundly serious nature of the moment and exhibited no perception of what was happening. And there you have it. So, I hope you enjoyed that. Enjoy the Dateline episode tonight. I'll probably be watching it tomorrow on replay on Peacock because I'm not going to get all up in arms about having to watch it tonight. I'm sure multitudes of people will ruin it for me before I get a chance to watch tomorrow. Or it possibly will just have the stuff that we saw in the highlighted trailer. So, Maestro, cue that music. Oh, by the way, I get off restrictions on Sunday, so probably Monday I'll be live streaming again on my channel, possibly. Y'all have a great night. Have a great weekend. Once again, Maestro, cue that music.